I always thought my husband was the quiet one, until I learned what he was hiding behind that silence. Part 1. The Quiet That Screamed. There was always something calm about Daniel. People admired that. My friends would gush about how grounded he was, how steady, how lucky I was to have a man who didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, didn't disappear into ego the way so many others did. And I believed them for a long time. Until I realized that silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means concealment. A quiet so careful it erases the evidence of 1,000 lies. We'd been married for almost 9 years. 9 ordinary, stable years. No major fights, no shouting matches, no slammed doors. But also, no passion, no spontaneous gestures, no open windows with laughter echoing through them at midnight. Just stillness. Daniel worked in IT consulting, reliable, private, disciplined. He came home at 6:45 p.m. every evening, ate the same dinner rotation, grilled chicken Mondays, pasta Wednesdays, steak Fridays, watched the same news anchor, sat on the same side of the couch. There was something sacred about his predictability, like a ritual that made the chaos of life feel manageable. But routine, when you look at it long enough, stops feeling like safety. It starts to feel like a cage. And eventually, you begin to wonder, what's he really thinking behind that quiet smile? It started with something simple. I was reorganizing the storage bench in the entryway, the one we hadn't touched in over a year. Tucked beneath a pile of old winter scarves and unopened mail was a slim black notebook, moleskin, unlabeled. I flipped it open, expecting maybe old shopping lists or tech notes. Instead, I found names, dozens of women's names, first names only. Beside each one a date, then symbols, hearts, X's, sometimes just an asterisk. I sat down on the floor, knees trembling. At first I thought maybe it was some old college artifact, a list from before me, a private ledger of conquests, crude as it might be. But the dates were recent. One of them, Sophie, March 3rd, was from just 2 weeks ago. I closed the book, my hands ice cold. The thing about silence is, once it breaks, everything floods in. I stared at the door, at the very hallway he walked through every night like clockwork, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't know who was coming home. When Daniel arrived that night, everything in me screamed. He kissed me on the cheek, asked about dinner, complimented my new blouse, all normal, all expected. I played along. I laughed at the right places. I asked him about his clients. He mentioned something about a glitch in a server in Tucson, but all I could hear was the sound of paper sliding in my head. A list, names, Sophie. When he went to shower, I grabbed his phone, locked. Of course it was, not unusual. But now, everything ordinary felt sinister. He came out in sweatpants and turned on the news like he always did. And I watched him. The man I'd shared a bed with for almost a decade. The man who held me when my mother died. Who carried my dreams in his quiet hands and whispered, "We'll build something together." "Who are you? And what have you done with the man I married?" I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because of fire. A rage I didn't know I was capable of. I waited until he left for work the next morning. Then I started searching. I went through drawers, his laptop, old files, backups, hidden folders, and slowly, like a fog lifting, a pattern began to form. There were photos, messages, alias email accounts. He was clever, not stupid, but not careful enough. The names matched the book. Some were short exchanges, some were years long, some included hotel receipts, and not just nearby. New York, Chicago, Toronto. He traveled for work, and apparently for other things. Some of the women sent selfies, sweet messages. "Miss you already." One even had a message that made my blood curdle. "I wish you could stay forever. I hate that she gets to have you every night." She meant me. I sat on our kitchen floor at 2:23 p.m., reading a thread between my husband and a woman named Elise. She was from Portland. They had a whole fantasy life together. Inside jokes, pet names, future plans. My eyes blurred, my fingers clenched. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to know everything. Because if I had to burn my world to the ground, I was going to make sure I understood every brick before I turned it to ash. When Daniel came home, I was calm. Too calm. "Hey, love," he said, placing his keys in the bowl. Love. He didn't see the storm behind my eyes, but he would, because his silence had spoken. and now it was my turn to answer. Part 2. The House of Hidden Doors. That night, I watched him sleep. Not in the romantic way, the way we do when we're falling in love, memorizing the curve of a brow, the flutter of a dream behind closed eyelids. No, I watched him the way a stranger watches something wild from behind glass, alert, still, and trying to decide how dangerous it truly is. His chest rose and fell in even rhythms, peaceful, innocent. But I knew better now. This man, this silent, loyal, predictable man, had a second life tucked neatly behind locked screens and business trips. A life built on deception, sustained by charm, protected by the soft weapon of trust. And I had handed him every tool to destroy me. Until now. The next morning, I brewed coffee like usual. His favorite, dark roast, splash of oat milk, 2 stevia packets, just the way he liked it, just the way I had always made it. He walked in wearing that same navy tie he always wore on Wednesdays. "Knew you'd be up early," he said, sliding into his seat, scrolling on his phone. I watched him sip the coffee I'd poured with trembling hands and imagined what it would feel like to hurl the whole mug against the wall. Instead, I smiled. "Of course, can't let you start the day without your fix." He chuckled, completely unaware that I was staring at the phone in his hands like it held the key to a locked prison, because it did. He left at 7:12 a.m. He kissed me on the forehead like he always did. And I waited for the door to close, for his car to pull out of the driveway before I sprinted upstairs. I had made a copy of the key to his locked drawer 3 months after we married. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I thought it was smart. Just in case. I never thought I'd need it to open Pandora's box. The drawer slid open without resistance. Inside were 2 flash drives, one labeled Work, the other unlabeled. It was the second one that terrified me. I plugged it into my laptop with trembling fingers, already bracing myself for the images, the messages, the files. But it wasn't that. Not yet. It was audio. Dozens of voice notes, each labeled with a date and an initial. I clicked one at random. "Hey babe, I'm thinking about that night in Vancouver again. God, the way you touched me." I closed the file immediately, bile rising in my throat. Another one. "I had to tell her I was on a late flight. She doesn't suspect anything. You're my escape, Elle." Elle. Elise, the Portland woman. They didn't just share beds. They shared secrets. He didn't just cheat. He built relationships. Fragile illusions of love in every corner of the country. How many women thought they were the one while I slept beside him every night, blind and faithful? I needed more, not just for my own sanity, but for proof. If I was going to confront him, it couldn't be hysterical accusations. He was too good at turning calm against me. I needed to be composed. I needed the evidence to speak, so I printed it all. Screenshots, photos, transcripts of audio. I built a file thicker than our marriage certificate. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year, my sister Nina. We'd grown distant after my wedding. She'd never liked Daniel. She once told me, "There's something too clean about him, like he rehearses every sentence before saying it." I'd brushed her off, told her she was being paranoid. Turns out she was just paying better attention than I was. When she picked up, her voice was cautious. "Sarah? Hey." A pause, then, "What's wrong?" I broke. The floodgates opened. I told her everything. The notebook, the emails, the audio files, the names. There was silence on the other end, but not Daniel's kind, not the heavy hiding kind, just the silence of someone trying not to scream. "I'm coming over," she said. Nina arrived that evening with a bottle of wine and a fury in her eyes I hadn't seen since our dad cheated on our mom. Does he know? No. Good, keep it that way. We sat at the dining table, the same one Daniel and I picked out together 7 years ago, the same one where we'd hosted friends, toasted anniversaries, laughed over burnt dinners. Now it was a war table. I think I want to trap him," I said quietly. Nina looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want to know how far he'll go. I want to watch him lie. I want to catch the look on his face when he realizes I know everything. I want him to feel what it's like to live in a lie and not be sure who's holding the matches." She didn't blink. "Then we'll set the stage." We planned everything. A fake trip. An unexpected girls' weekend out of town. Something I hadn't done in years. I'd leave on Friday, come back Sunday. But I wouldn't really be gone. Nina and I rented a hotel nearby, installed cameras in the house, synced audio monitors. If he brought someone here, if he made contact with one of them, we would see, and once I had it all, I would decide what to do next. That night, as I lay beside him in bed, he curled up next to me, his breath against my neck. "I love you," he whispered, and I whispered it back, not because I meant it, but because I needed to hear how empty the words had become. Part 3. The Illusion of Control. The moment I locked the door behind me, leaving the house empty of my presence but not my eyes, I felt a strange mix of liberation and dread. I wasn't really leaving. Not entirely. Nina and I slipped quietly into the rented hotel room a few blocks away, sterile, unfamiliar, cold, the kind of place where secrets felt heavier. We unpacked laptops, cameras, and audio gear with practiced precision, the kind that only comes from years of sibling trust and shared trauma. We set up cameras in the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, all places Daniel moved through like clockwork. Audio monitors tucked discreetly beneath cushions, and just like that, our home transformed into a cage, the bars invisible but unbreakable. I sat down with a glass of wine, the faint buzz loosening the knots in my stomach. "I don't know if I can do this," I confessed to Nina. She looked at me, fierce, unwavering. "You don't have a choice, not anymore." She was right. For years, I'd let Daniel's silence lull me into a false sense of security. I convinced myself that love was enough, that if you just kept believing, everything would fall into place. But now, I realized love alone isn't armor. Sometimes it's a blindfold. That Friday night dragged. I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the window, every sound from the house on the monitor sent my heart racing. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Safe travels. Miss you already." I stared at it like it was poison. Miss you? What did that word mean when he was lying to me? Saturday was worse. The cameras caught every move. Daniel's routines didn't change. He cooked dinner for one. Same grilled chicken, same salad. He sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. And then, just before midnight, the doorbell rang. My breath caught. I saw him on the monitor, opening the door with a smile I had never seen before. A woman stepped inside. Dark hair, red lipstick, laughter that echoed through the quiet house. "Elise." They kissed, slowly, deliberately. I felt the weight of every second in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the screen apart, but I held still. Because this was my truth, my proof. The next few hours blurred. I watched them move through the house. Whispered conversations, stolen touches, the kind of intimacy I thought was mine. I wasn't just witnessing betrayal, I was living it. Sunday morning, Nina and I sat in silence, nursing coffee. "We need to decide what comes next," she said finally. I nodded, but inside, I was torn. Part of me wanted to confront Daniel right away, to scream, to demand answers, to tear down the walls he'd built. Another part was terrified of what I might find, terrified of losing everything. I called my therapist. "Tell me what to do," I whispered. She didn't hesitate. "Protect yourself first. Gather your support. This isn't just about him, it's about you." Her words grounded me, because beneath the fury, beneath the heartbreak, I needed to remember who I was, not just a wife, not just a victim, but a woman fighting to reclaim her life. When I finally stepped back into the house that Sunday evening, everything felt different. The walls no longer whispered comfort, they echoed secrets. Daniel was waiting, calm, too calm, like he knew the war had already begun. Part 4. The Confrontation. I walked through the front door like I was stepping into a battlefield. The air was thick with tension. Every breath I took felt weighted, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. Daniel sat on the couch, exactly where he always did, scrolling his phone like nothing had changed. But everything had. I stood frozen for a moment, feeling the years of love, betrayal, and silence crashing down on me. He looked up, eyes steady. "Hey," he said casually. My voice caught in my throat. "Daniel, we need to talk." He nodded, motioning for me to sit. The way he acted calm, so calm, sent a cold shiver down my spine, like a man who's rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head. I pulled out the folder, thick with printed emails, transcripts, screenshots, and photos. His eyes flickered when he saw it. "That's a lot." "You lied to me," I said quietly, every word burning. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I never wanted you to find out this way. I laughed bitterly. Well, it's too late for that. I watched him carefully, waiting for an apology, for anger, for anything. But he stayed silent. I'm tired, Sarah. Tired of pretending. And what am I supposed to do with that? He looked up, eyes haunted. You don't understand. Try me. He hesitated, then started to talk about the loneliness he felt, the pressure to be perfect, the emptiness behind his smile. And Elise, she wasn't just a lover, he said. She was a lifeline, a mistake born from desperation. His words spilled out like a confession and a plea. But did I believe him? That night, I lay awake, the room dark except for the moonlight spilling through the curtains. I replayed his words over and over. Was it really loneliness, or was it betrayal disguised as loneliness? I realized then that love is complicated. It's messy, painful, and sometimes it's about choosing who to trust, even when every fiber of your being wants to turn away. The next day we talked more, longer, rawer, no more lies, no more pretending. We faced the wreckage of our marriage, together for the first time in years. But the question hung in the air, could something broken ever be truly fixed? Part 5. The Shattered Mirror. I always thought the worst part of betrayal would be the moment you find out, the screaming, the tears, the undeniable proof. But I was wrong. The worst part is what comes after. The quiet, the questions, the slow, agonizing unraveling of everything you thought was true. Daniel moved through the house like a ghost after our confrontation. He spoke softer. He touched less. Sometimes I caught him staring at me, eyes full of something I couldn't name. Regret, maybe, or guilt, or fear. We shared a bed, but nothing else. Our bodies existed inches apart, but the space between us was vast and frozen. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, him and Elise, in our home, their laughter echoing through my mind like a cruel taunt. I started writing things down, memories, feelings, ugly thoughts. It became a ritual, my pen a sword against the chaos in my heart. I don't know if I love him anymore. I don't know if I ever really knew him. I want to forgive, but I don't know how. Nina checked in daily. She begged me to leave him, said I deserved better. Maybe I did. But it's not that simple when your life is woven into someone else's. Our mortgage, our families, our future, our history. On Thursday night, I asked Daniel to meet me in the backyard. It was the place we once built a fire pit together, when we still smiled for real. He came out slowly like a man walking toward judgment. I didn't sugarcoat it. I don't know if we can survive this. He nodded, rubbing his hands together. I know. I'm angry, and I don't trust you. His face crumpled slightly. I deserve that. We stood in silence for a long time, the air between us crackling with memories and shame. I need answers, I said finally. He looked at me. Not away, not down, right at me. Ask. So I did. Why her? Why here? When did it start? Was it love? Did you ever think about me? His answers came slowly, each one like a stone dropped into water, creating ripples of pain. It started last year, he admitted. Just talking at first. She listened. She saw me. I scoffed. So did I. He winced. I didn't mean for it to go that far. But it did. Yes. A long pause. Was it love? He looked away. I don't know. That hurt more than a yes. By the end of the night, my hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I need time, I told him, to think, to feel this, alone. He nodded, swallowing hard. I'll move out. That surprised me. You'd do that? If it gives you peace? Yes. For once, he wasn't trying to control the narrative. He was just surrendering. When the door closed behind him the next day, I cried. Not the angry kind, not even the broken kind. It was grief. For the marriage we had. For the woman I was before the lies. For the version of him that used to reach for my hand without hesitation. Days passed in stillness. The house felt hollow. I cleaned everything, reorganized the kitchen, repainted the bedroom, donated half the things in the garage. It was a purge, not of stuff, but of pain. And slowly, something shifted in me. I didn't forgive, not yet, but I began to breathe again, for me. One morning, I sat in the backyard alone, the fire pit untouched, weeds poking through the cracks, and I realized even burned things can bloom again, but only if you give them time, only if you stop watering the lie. Part 6, What Still Hurts. 3 weeks had passed since Daniel left the house. I counted the days, then stopped. The silence had shifted from haunting to healing. For the first time in years, I heard my own thoughts clearly, not filtered through the lens of our marriage, not bent around Daniel's moods or the fragile shape of our love. Just me, breathing, existing, trying. But healing is never linear. Some mornings I woke up feeling strong, whole. Other mornings I felt shattered before I even opened my eyes. One Wednesday afternoon, I opened the mailbox and found an envelope addressed in Daniel's handwriting. No return address. I sat on the front steps, heart pounding. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Sarah, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. Everything you carried, everything I missed. I was a coward, and I'm sorry, Daniel. There was no signature flourish, no pleading, just raw honesty. I folded the note and tucked it between the pages of my journal. It didn't make anything easier, but it made something feel real. He was changing, or at least trying to. But so was I. That weekend, I joined a local yoga class. It was awkward at first. I felt exposed, like my grief was a second skin everyone could see. But I kept going. Every stretch, every breath, every quiet moment became part of a rebuilding process. One night after class, a man introduced himself. His name was Caleb. He had kind eyes and a voice that didn't demand attention. He wasn't trying to fix me. He wasn't trying to charm me. He just existed beside me, asking simple questions. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was drowning in someone else's shadow. We talked in the parking lot for an hour, not about our pasts, but about small things. Books, movies, coffee preferences. It was refreshing and terrifying, because as I laughed, I felt guilt prick at the edges of my joy. Was it too soon? Was it wrong to feel even a flicker of curiosity for someone new? But I reminded myself, feeling something new doesn't erase what was real. It just means I'm still alive, still capable of connection. That night, Daniel called. Not to fight, not to beg, just to talk. "Do you think we ever really knew each other?" he asked after a long silence. I closed my eyes. "I think we wanted to." "Do you miss me?" I didn't answer right away. "I miss who I thought you were." Silence. Then, softly, "That's fair." We didn't talk about Elise. Not anymore. He said it ended the moment I found out, and I believed him. But it didn't matter anymore. That part of the story was over. Now we were somewhere else entirely. Not lovers, not strangers, something in between. A week later, Nina came over with wine and chocolate, and the familiar protective fire in her eyes. "You're glowing," she said, narrowing her gaze at me. "I'm not." "You are. Something's different." I smiled. "Maybe I'm just remembering who I was before all this." She grinned. "That woman was a badass." I told her about Caleb. She raised an eyebrow. "Do I need to run a background check?" I laughed for the first time in what felt like months. "No, he's just easy to be around." She softened. "You deserve that." I nodded, but deep down, I knew something was still holding me back. Not Daniel, not Caleb, me. The part of me that still believed love was supposed to hurt. That loyalty meant staying, no matter how broken things got, that letting go was failure. But maybe, just maybe, letting go is how you start again, not with someone new, with yourself. One night, I took Daniel's letter from the journal and read it again. This time I didn't cry. I didn't rage, I just felt. And I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was exhausted from carrying that weight. So, I lit a candle. Watched the paper curl and darken in the flame. And as the ash crumbled into the dish, I whispered to the room, "I forgive you." He wasn't there to hear it, but I didn't say it for him. I said it for me. Part 7. The Choice. The day Daniel came back was warm. Early autumn sun soft against the windows, leaves whispering promises of change. I was watering the small lavender plant by the porch when I saw his car pull up. No warning, no call, just him, standing on the front walk holding a small box in his hands. I stayed still for a long moment, unsure if I was angry, nervous, or something else entirely. Eventually, I walked to the edge of the steps. He looked older, tired, but calm. "I didn't mean to just show up," he said, voice careful. "I should have called." "What's in the box?" "Some of your things, from the apartment. I wasn't sure if you'd want them." I nodded, taking it from him. Inside, I saw a scarf I thought I'd lost, a dog-eared copy of the bell jar, a photo of us in Venice. Strange how small objects hold the weight of an entire life. We stood there, awkward and quiet. "I've been in therapy," he finally said. I looked up. "Good. 3 times a week." I raised an eyebrow. "Trying to speedrun redemption?" He winced, but didn't flinch. "I know it doesn't fix what I did, nothing will, but I needed to understand how I became that version of myself." I exhaled slowly. "And?" He looked down at his shoes. "Turns out I was afraid of being seen, really seen. You always saw me, Sarah, and I think I hated that because it meant I had to face myself too." I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know if it mattered anymore. "Do you want to come in?" The question surprised us both. He nodded slowly. We sat at the kitchen table like ghosts from a former life. 2 mugs of tea between us, untouched. He glanced around. "You changed things?" I nodded. "Had to." He looked at the living room wall, now painted a warm cream color. We used to argue about that wall. He wanted navy. I wanted light. "I like it," he said. Of course he did now. I sipped my tea and finally asked what had been sitting on my chest. "Why now, Daniel?" He swallowed hard. "Because I realized I was waiting for you to fix us, even after everything. I thought, if you yelled enough, cried enough, maybe you'd find a way to forgive me. But it's not your job to heal what I broke." I said nothing. There was nothing left to say to that truth. Then he added softer, "I miss you. But more than that, I miss the version of myself I was before I hurt you." That landed like a stone in the center of my chest. Not because it made me pity him, because I knew exactly what he meant. I missed myself too. We talked for 2 hours. Not about fixing anything, just about us. Our old life. What we wanted back then, what we didn't say. It felt like burying a time capsule, letting go of something we once loved, with honor, not bitterness. When he stood to leave, he lingered by the door. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I just wanted you to know I'm trying." I nodded. "I know." That night, I didn't cry. I didn't dream of him either. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, heart strangely quiet. The next morning, I texted Caleb. "Coffee later?" He replied within seconds. "Always." We met at the little bookstore cafe I'd grown to love. He brought his sketchbook, and I brought a book I'd been pretending to read for weeks. We talked, we laughed. I told him about Daniel's visit. To my surprise, he didn't flinch. "I figured he'd come around eventually," Caleb said. "And you're okay with that?" He nodded. "You don't owe me certainty, just honesty." I looked at him across the table, wondering how someone so kind could walk into the middle of my chaos and not run. "I don't know what I'm ready for," I admitted. He smiled gently. "Maybe you don't need to know yet." And with that, he reached across the table and took my hand, not possessively, not claiming me, just holding space. It was the first time I realized love doesn't always have to arrive like lightning. Sometimes it's a quiet hand on yours in a noisy world. That night, I lit another candle, but there were no letters to burn, no apologies to write, just a quiet acceptance. That healing doesn't always look like closure. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself, every day, even when it's hard, especially then. Part 8. The Door I Chose. The last time I saw Daniel, the sky was grey with the promise of rain. We met at the park near the edge of the city, the place where we used to bring coffee on quiet Sundays, where the world felt still and we once felt certain. Now it was neutral ground, no home, no memory thick enough to blur clarity, just 2 people standing in the aftermath. He brought a small paper bag. "Your favorite," he said, handing it to me. Inside, a croissant from that old French cafe. Buttery, flaky, still warm. Something about it almost broke me, not because of what it was, but because he remembered. "I didn't come here to change your mind," he said. "I just wanted to say goodbye the right way." We sat on the bench beneath the oak tree. The air smelled like earth and endings. "I used to think love was sacrifice," I said, breaking the silence. "I think we both did," he answered. "I thought if I gave enough, time, patience, parts of myself, I'd earn your love back. But that's not how it works, is it?" He shook his head slowly. "No. Love that needs to be earned isn't love." I nodded. The wind picked up. Leaves danced across the path in chaotic swirls. Beautiful, aimless. Daniel pulled something from his pocket. A tiny silver ring on a chain. Not my wedding ring, something else. "You remember this?" he asked. I did. A trinket from our honeymoon. We'd found it in a tiny shop in Barcelona. The man who sold it told us it was a symbol of beginning again. It had become a joke between us. Every time we argued, he'd hold it up and say, "Ready for our next beginning?" "I kept it," he said. And not because I thought we'd get back together, but because it reminded me of the hope we once had. I looked at it and smiled sadly. Hope is a beautiful liar when it wants to be. "I think I'll always love you," I said softly. Daniel's eyes didn't fill with tears. They didn't need to. He knew it too. "And I'll always wish I hadn't broken us." Silence. Then, finally, I stood. "I forgive you," I said again, this time face to face, not whispered into a room alone, not scribbled in a letter, out loud, real. He breathed in, shaky. "Thank you." We didn't hug. We didn't touch. Some endings are clean because they have to be, and I walked away. I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly for a while, windows down, letting the wind pull at me. Then I parked outside the bookstore cafe. Caleb was sitting inside, sketching, unaware. When I walked in, he looked up, eyes softening. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, and I meant it. Later that night, we walked down by the water. The air was cool. I told him everything, the bench, the goodbye, the ring. He listened, patient, unshaken. Then he asked, "Do you still love him?" It was the question I'd been avoiding for weeks. "Yes," I said, "but not in the way I used to." He nodded, absorbing it. "And what do you feel for me?" I didn't rush the answer, because this time, no part of me wanted to lie, not even to protect his heart. I feel peace and possibility and something I haven't felt in a long time. "What's that?" "Safety." He smiled, but it wasn't prideful. It was gentle, grateful. He reached for my hand again, and this time I held it back. In the weeks that followed, I started painting again. I joined a book club. I bought a new comforter for the bed, not because it needed one, but because I wanted softness. I danced around the kitchen to sad songs. I laughed at dumb movies. I allowed myself to grieve and grow in the same breath. Love doesn't always die with betrayal. Sometimes it lingers. Like a ghost you learn to live beside. But eventually, you stop speaking to it. You let it fade. And then, one morning, you wake up and realize you're free. Not because someone saved you, but because you saved yourself.